and
How important that
how
is to you.
important that is to you. Just tell us a little bit about like how you keep yourself accountable.
That shit's important to us.
Well, it's mainly just about checking yourself, and really the easiest way to go about it is to just accept that everything's your fault. And once and it sounds like a terrible thing, but really, the flip side of that means that if it was your fault, that means you could control it. And
Yep.
if it wasn't your fault, then that means it was completely out of your control, and it was terrible luck, and you cannot change it, and nothing can be done about it. But when you flip that mindset, to everything's my fault, and it doesn't matter where, if you go down the line with the butterfly effect and things like that, there was somewhere down the line where, you could have done something to change the outcome of that situation to better fit what ended up happening. So that was a thing that I kind of started getting into when I was reading. I read a lot of different books about different things, body language and just confidence or sports therapy or sports psychology, just all kinds of stuff, business stuff, and that was just from different books I'd read and put together. And that there's so many people out there that you see, especially on social media and stuff, and they're like, "Oh, this happened to me," and blah blah blah, blah blah blah. Every time somebody has a solution, they have an excuse, and that's
Right.
not their fault. It's not their fault, and I'm like, that's just a shitty way to live,
Yep.
to just be at the mercy of everybody else all the time. And I just choose not to live that way. And just because something was your fault doesn't mean it was something that you could have stopped. But there's a lot of things that you do that you can't foresee, the results of what it's going to be until it happens, and then you're like,
Yep.
oh well, damn,
Balls in front of you.
like, okay, well, that's what happens when I do that. So what's important is to learn from it. But the issue is when you never accept that something went wrong or that it was your fault, you can't change it, and then you just feel like, oh, you blow it off. And that, I think, a lot of it came into my fighting, and getting into the psychology of fighting and trying to get better and trying to fix myself, because I've always been just naturally, I mean, it's not just in an arrogant way. It's just I've naturally been good at this. And it's because I've been doing it since I was like 3 or 4. So every time I've trained, every time I've gone, I've just naturally been good at it, and I took that for granted. And I, as a kid, not realizing that, having that self accountability, when you lose or something happens, you make excuses so that it's not your fault, and you just constantly do that. And but the whole time you do that, in the back of your head it's an excuse,
Yep.
but
Yep.
you don't accept it. And it's the same thing, if you don't confess, you can't be redeemed. And that's really where the start of it, went, because I had fights where things went wrong and I was just blowing it off, be like, no, that wasn't my fault. I lost that fight. That wasn't my fault. This happened. And maybe, and like sometimes it was just some shitty stuff that happened, but there were things I could have done, better. Like one time I got hit in the back of the head a bunch of times, and that it was illegal. It was against the rules. They should have stopped it. They should have done this and that. But I didn't feel right in that fight. I wasn't going to win that fight. But I knew that. But I got to say, or people got to say, oh well, he hit him in the back of the head. Yeah, he did. But that's kind of a cop out, because I shouldn't have gotten put in that position in the first place. And
Right.
that's when you start to be, severely critical of yourself, and that's the way where you start to grow.
Yep.
So uh, I just see, and I try to do that with like my kids, my students, and my jujitsu students and stuff like that. There will be, like there was a kid, for example, that he went against one of my guys and he lost. My guy lost or whatever, and then another guy was like, "Oh, well, that guy was in the Olympics." We're like, "What?" And like he was in the Olympic trials or something for running or track and field or something like that, and I'm like, "Give a shit." This is a
Was
Yeah.
it?
jujitsu match. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, so what? What? Oh, so it's okay that he beat you because that dude was in the Olympics when he was in high school or was in the Junior
For
Olympics or
something
whatever. Like,
else
he's a
completely.
grown ass. He's a man. You're a man. Like, don't do that. You lost because you didn't perform and you didn't do what you were supposed to. So and that's kind of the thing that I needed somebody to do to me when I was that age. And when I was trying to come up and when I was doing that, because I had such this big head and this arrogance that I couldn't be touched. And even when I was touched, it wasn't my fault. It couldn't be my fault. Right? I'm too good. Can't be my
Yep.
fault. But all that does is keep you from growing. And so when I finally kind of accepted that and started to live my life that way in general, everything started to come together a little better.
Yeah, because you look back at the tapes and you're like, oh man, this is what I did wrong. I could do this a little bit better, take a little bit
Right.
less damage,
Well, and
Yeah.
the more accountable you are with yourself as a whole, not even talking about your professional career, just your inward as a human, the better you're going to be everywhere else, in my opinion. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. I
you
mean, and you got